Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Facebook Live Friday. This is Rosalind from the Conscious CEO Experience. As you can see, I am outdoors. Yes, actually I started a video. Anyhow, so today I'm out in my garden actually, and for the first time I'm enjoying some restful time in the home, and so excited to share with you my topic for today. We're still in the month of April, and the topic for today I apologize. The topic for today is 3 ways that leaders and entrepreneurs lose their power in their business and what to do about it. I am set up in a very plant foliagey area, and so my phone fell. I apologize for that. So it is the last month of the last Facebook Live of the month, and I'm almost sad that this series is coming to an end. I have so much to say about this topic of leadership, power, and influence. And I thought for this episode, I want to speak to really power. I haven't spoken to it directly per se. And there's so much around power. You know, it's a word that is in our consciousness all the time. It's in the news, it's especially in politics. It's something that is often used within relationships. You know, have you heard of the expression, we're in a power struggle right now, or I'm caught in a power struggle? And it's a word that's also prominent in business. You know, it's not a surprise. So much of why people get into business, what people do in business, how people conduct relationships really have to do with power. And so I want to make a distinction first and foremost between, I'm going to assume that, you know, people in this community, leaders in our community, appreciate the difference between power over and power with, as well as power within. As a precursor to my topic today, which is really 3 ways that leaders and entrepreneurs lose power and what to do about it. Power over is the old school version of power, where there is someone who's dominant and someone who's subordinate. And that version of power likely in the next decade will make its way out, and a new consciousness will be brought forth, and that is power with and power within. So power with is power that comes from recognizing that nobody is really dominant over another person. So you're not dominant over, let's say, your employees, for example, or your clients, your colleagues, even if you are someone who has a leadership title or leadership position, recognizing that you're sharing power with everyone in your company and your business. And power within really is all about recognizing that our self-awareness and honesty with self actually gives us the capacity to be more powerful, show up more powerfully in a workplace, and how we, even right down to, you know, the way we write our communications, our emails that are such a almost, you know, like non-negotiable part of business these days, right? So power over, shifting from that paradigm to power with and power within. So that is really the foundation that I want to springboard this episode on, with regard to the 3 ways leaders and entrepreneurs lose their power. I'm just admiring the trees behind me. decided to go for a lunchtime walk. I hope that you get a chance to do that today or on the weekend, or really any work day. Any day is a good day to go for a walk. So back to the 3 ways we lose our power as leaders. So number 1, very common, and that is being in overwhelm. So many of us, so many leaders and entrepreneurs are caught up in overwhelm. It's almost as though it's acceptable to be overwhelmed. Even the expression, "Oh, I'm so busy," and everything is so stressful. There is a healthy amount of stress when you're running a business. But what I so often hear from my clients and the leaders that I meet is that they're overwhelmed, right? And it's really important to recognize that as hard as it may be to take at first, that overwhelm is in fact a choice. So you can ask yourself when you're in overwhelm is, why do I choose to overwhelm, and can I make a different choice? And it doesn't have to be an overnight solution per se. So you don't expect yourself to go from overwhelm one moment and completely serene and have everything handled the next moment, right? Give yourself the time and space to consider why you choose overwhelm and take some small steps to do that. You can check out time management workshops, for example, so practical steps. But then, to be honest, it starts as a state of mind, right? You recognize why you choose overwhelm and make a decision to get out of it. Because when we're in overwhelm, we're allowing the overwhelm to control our decisions, control our time, control our day. And all of a sudden, before you know it, it's overwhelm that's running your business rather than yourself. So just take a moment to, if you're someone who is overwhelmed or who's constantly overwhelmed, take some time to acknowledge, okay, is this really how I want to run my business, how I want to live my life for the next year, 2 years, even 5 years? Because when you recognize it's a choice, then you can take the judgment out of it. You can take, a lot, stress, expectation, and you can simply make a different choice in that regard. Okay, so don't accept overwhelm. Don't tolerate it. Even in times of change or transition, when it can feel overwhelming, especially when there's more unknowns than knowns, do your absolute best to stay grounded and not let yourself get there, especially mentally. We lose a lot of our power that way. The second way leaders and entrepreneurs lose their power is likely more subtle, and that is not taking the time. Actually connects with the overwhelm. So not taking the time to get honest with themselves about their emotional responses and emotional reactions to their business. So let's kind of just get really practical here. Say you are a CEO or a manager, right? And you have I'm seeing there's a bee nearby. Say you have a project that needed to get done, right? And for whatever reason, it doesn't go your way, timelines gone astray, and your team is not performing the way you want them to. Maybe there's been some miscommunication, right? Maybe there's been some hiccups that were outside of your control and their control, right? And so often as managers and leaders, there's this sort of feeling of, I gotta have it together for my team, right? And to some extent that's true. They need they need to be able to look to you during times of change or even crisis for your leadership and your direction. However, when you have emotional responses, and I'm not talking about reactive emotional responses, when you have healthy emotional responses such as disappointment or even frustration, often it's disappointment, but there could also be frustration or even some anger, right? We talked about anger last week and how we can really take time to pay attention to anger and look beneath what's going on. This often more acceptable emotion rather than expressing hurt or disappointment. Recognizing that the workplace is a human environment, right? And nobody's gonna be perfect, and people eventually, it's so funny because sometimes, when I work with clients, it seems like a news flash for them that, hello, newsflash, like your team is going to fail you at some point or another, like they're not, like I said, they're not robots. And so when I can understand when you're, say, a high achiever or someone who wants to have some measure of control and you have high standards as a leader, can almost create this strange cognitive dissonance to accept that sometimes people will fail you, and people will not always get it right. And it's amazing how much emotional honesty and clarity about the impact and what those actions or misactions, and how having courageous conversations with your team, whether it's a team of 30, right? You're at a board meeting, one of those, in a corporate high-rise, or whether it's just a meeting around a small team. It's really important to get emotionally honest. And I'm finding that when leaders are not emotionally honest with themselves, and they can't be emotionally honest with their team. And your team wants to see you also as not just a leader, but as someone, as a human who has needs, who experiences disappointments and failures and setbacks, and to be able to relate at that level as well. Gone are the days when you're, as a boss, you're not allowed to show any emotion. You're simply you're almost expected to perform at all costs, right? And more in the workplace, that's almost, it's, people look at that and go, that's not healthy, or that's really not conducive to creating a cohesive team, a team that utilizes power within as opposed to power over. So don't give away your power by not embracing your truth about something. It could be with even a client. It could be with a supplier who, mishandles delivery dates. Who knows, right? Get really real with the people that you work with and have courageous conversations with them. Trust me, you'll feel more powerful having had those conversations rather than not, and then having it show up as another problem in a different department. Maybe it becomes a logistical problem, and maybe it becomes operational problem. It hardly actually stays in one place. If you think about it like a virus. So when you have as a leader, when you have an emotional reaction to something going on in your business, it actually is in the orbit and the energy of your business. And if it's not clear, then it's almost creates like a stopper, and it can infect all areas of your business. So part of what I encourage leaders to do is do a little detective work. A problem that's seemingly, let's just say, a sales problem, could actually, at the end of the day, be a human resource problem, right? Or a leadership problem, or an issue in logistics can be about something else. So do a little digging, and a great question to ask yourself is, what have I not told the truth to myself about, and what have I not told the truth to others? So if you keep honesty and truth telling, which is a skill, if you keep that at the top and at the forefront of how you do business, then you will actually experience a more consistent source of power, and that you're not constantly being pulled in different directions, and having to put out fires all the time. All right, I just lost my it's quite windy over here, so I just lost my notes, but luckily I remembered the third way that leaders, entrepreneurs lose power in their business, and that is not having a clear vision, and or losing sight of their vision. Okay, so I have a feeling this should have been number one, because it's so basic, but I left it to number 3 because it's so key. Having a clear vision is like an artist envisioning a painting, right? And it first drops in as an idea or as a vision in their mind, and then they paint it out. And in the different pieces of the painting, say you're painting a landscape, or you're painting people, or you're painting fruit, right? And the different pieces then become different areas of your business that become manifest. But you don't have a vision first, then you don't really have a direction in which you want to go to. However, most people think that's the hard part, but that's not the hard part. The hard part is actually staying with and sticking with your vision. It can be so easy and tempting. I'm personally going through a transition right now in my business, that is really challenging my core values. And you may find yourself 2, 3, 5 years in, sometimes even 10 years in. At 10 years in, you might find yourself go through a couple of iterations of this, where you've taken your business to a certain point, and then you're reevaluating whether it still matches with your original vision and your values. So I recommend doing an evaluation, an assessment, some kind of reflection every couple of years at the very least. I mean, if not every year, then every couple of years. And asking yourself, why did I do this in the first place? Like, what was the main driver? What was my why in the first place? And are the activities that I'm engaged in right now still aligned with that why? Because when we become misaligned, which happens when a business starts growing organically, or a company starts growing organically, it starts to have a life of its own. And unfortunately, it's not something that you can just, unless it's, business in a box, it's not something you can just walk away from and it can run its own. It's something that needs constant monitoring, and if you wanted to have a conscious business, this is what it requires, is making sure you hold on to your vision, and not, going back to the honesty piece, not lying to yourself about, this actually aligns with this values, and creating almost justifications for the changes. So get real honest with yourself about whether you're aligned with your original vision or not. And if not, then it's fine. It's fine to revision, right? You don't have to. You're not married to your original vision, right? And if you feel inclined to revision, that's fine as well, for as long as you can then realign your current business to the new vision. Does that make sense? So I'm thinking of Apple. If you're a Mac user at all, or if you know someone who's a Apple loyalist, if you recall Steve Jobs, his original vision was to create a world where technology can be something that is actually fun and improves people's lives, and that can make the world a better place, right? It wasn't like he created the iPod and then came up with the vision, right? And even those times, Apple went through some hard times. There was a time when Steve Jobs was shut out of his own company, right? And it's because he stuck to his vision, right? His company had become something else, and there were leaders in that company that had wanted to take the company in a different direction. And when he was shut out of the company didn't do so well. And then when he came back, then, the sails were realigned, so to speak, and it could sail into the direction that they really were meant to go in the first place. Even if it is, 10 years later, 15 years later, the importance of holding on to your vision, I cannot emphasize it enough. And you lose so much of your power and potency as a leader when there will be things, right? There will be things constantly over the years that will come up to steer your way. But so important to move right back in. I cannot think of a better time spent than once a year, once every couple years, really getting back in touch with why you are in business in the first place, why you're with this company in the first place, why you're leading the ship, and just get really honest with yourself about what needs to stay and what needs to go and what needs to be birth or rebirth in the next iteration of your business or company. So, and the birds are agreeing with me. I hope you can hear the bird songs. They're really sweet. So that's really my offering for you today is to remind you that your power and leadership influence as a leader and entrepreneur is a lot more in your hands than you think. And so often we try to, it's funny how we humans trying to gain a sense of power through things that we can hardly control sometimes. And how we, really get into the nitty-gritty of the operations, and then we just lose sight of the bigger picture. So this is a reminder for you to stay connected to the bigger picture. And speaking of big picture and being a leader, the webinar for this month, and I can't believe it's end of April already. Next Monday is still the month of April. So for April 30th, the webinar is all about boss to leader, 3 keys to authentic leadership to reduce your stress and increase your effectiveness. Usually I post a link to the webinar right in the Facebook Live description. And the webinar this time is in the evening. It's going to be from 6 p.m. PST start. And you can sign up, just enter your name and email, and you'll get instructions to join then. There will also be a recording if you cannot make it. Do I have any other announcements? That's the main one. And for those of you who want to hop on the mastermind preview, there is still room, so go ahead and do that. If you're already in my newsletter community, you have already gotten the invitation. And if you're watching and if you're feeling like I could use me some clarity, or as a leader you feel lonely at the top, or as an entrepreneur you could use like-minded individuals, people on the same track as you, to journey with you, then I do invite you to hop on the preview, because you get to experience what it's like to mastermind with other consciousness leaders, and to experience the facilitation by myself. If you don't already know what a mastermind is, feel free to Google that. Some masterminds are not facilitated, so they can be peer-based, and some masterminds are facilitated by a coach, or a mentor, or a teacher, and so this one is 100% facilitated. All right, I'm not sure how much time it's been, but I have a feeling I've reached the end of this Facebook Live. So until next time, remember, I believe in you, and I believe that you can create extraordinary success on your own terms and from the inside out. Bye for now.